An Afghan interpreter who fled to Britain after being threatened by the Taliban has finally been granted asylum here. Elyas Mohtasham worked with the army for 4 years but fled Afghanistan in July after he and his family began receiving death threats. Before being allowed to stay in the UK, he'd been arrested and held as an illegal immigrant. Rosie Leyden has been speaking exclusively to him.
Tell me about your experience with the British Army. Did you enjoy the job?
I really did. I've worked for the British Army for more than 3 years and I really loved it, to be honest.
As well as the constant dangers all interpreters face working alongside frontline soldiers, in 2009 Elyas was at the FOB in Nadi Ali where 5 British soldiers, led by Sergeant Major Darren Chant, were shot dead by a rogue Afghan policeman.
I was there and I was working with the Sergeant Major. We stayed there with ANPs and we were mentoring, clearing the routes because they were building a new checkpoint on that route. And yes, it was a horrible day, very horrible incident. I mean, I missed him. Yeah, he was really a good boss. And yeah, it was a very horrible day.
Always a dangerous job, the 650 Afghan interpreters who've performed the service for British troops over the last 10 years have reported mounting pressures and an escalation in Taliban threats even in the last 12 months. Earlier this year, Elyas and his family received 2 letters from the Taliban which persuaded him he had to leave the country.
What did it say?
Stop working with these people. We know you're working with British. They are the enemy of Afghanistan and peace and other things If you do not, you can't guarantee your life for another moment.
Within the week, Elyas came to the UK, but when he arrived, he was arrested for entering the country without a passport. After 2 months in Wormwood Scrubs prison, he was released when a former CO gave testimony about his exceptional service by telephone from Kabul. He's since been granted asylum within a record 2 days of application. He's very pleased but anxious about others in his situation.
That would be good for the interpreters and also their families. I mean, after 2014 and when the British troops leave Afghanistan, things might get worse or things might get better. We have to wait and see. And that's the British government's decision.
A spokesman for the Home Office said there was nothing equivalent to the 2007 Iraq policy, which grants asylum to some interpreters who worked with the British Army during that campaign. But the position was under constant review.
For Elyas, the future is looking more positive. But there are still hundreds of Afghan interpreters putting their lives at risk every day working for British troops on the front line. And many of them are deeply concerned about what happens to them when combat troops leave the country in 2015. Rosie Leyden, Forces News in London.